So this video is going to be about shutter speed, ISO and aperture. So the first one, using the Nikon D3300, is shutter speed. When shooting on manual, you will be able to alter the shutter speed with the back wheel, moving it from left to right to change it up and down. So what shutter speed is how long it takes the camera to take a photo. So on 1/200th of a second shutter speed, it takes a 200th of a second to take the photo. On 2 seconds, it takes 2 seconds to take the photo. What shutter speed does is the longer the photo takes to take the photo, the more light that is taken in through the lens into the photo. So in really dark conditions, you will need a longer shutter speed to take a photo that is correctly exposed. However, taking such as sport photography, and a lot of photography which I do is transport photography, where things like planes and trains are moving quite quickly, you need quite a high shutter speed. This is to prevent blur, because if you have a low shutter speed and something's moving quite quickly, you will end up moving your camera with it and it will create blur, or there will just be a blur as it goes past your screen, past the lens, and there'll just be a bit blur left. So you need to have the correct shutter speed for such instances. But a lot of it is to do with light as well, so you need good lighting if you want a higher shutter speed. So say it's a nice clear sunny day, blue skies, you will be able to have a much higher shutter speed than on a cloudy rainy day. So this is because there is more light in the natural landscape, so more light is able to get to the camera in that maybe 500th of a second as you take someone running down a racetrack. Whereas on a cloudy day you may need 200th or even 100th of a second, depending on your other settings. Now you can make the shutter speed higher by compensating with ISO and aperture, but we will get to that shortly. So the next one is aperture. Aperture ranges from low values, usually on a standard lens like this one, of f3.5 up to the likes of f20, f22. So the lower the aperture, the wider the thing in the camera is open. So the wider the circle on the lens is open, the more light can come into the camera, the more light and more exposed the photo is. So f3.5, you'll be letting the most light into your photo, whereas at f22 the circle is quite narrow. It may only be like this, whereas f3.5 would be quite big. Obviously it's in a lot smaller size in the camera lens, but that's how the principle works. Now with aperture, the lower you go, the less depth of field you have. However, you do come to a sweet spot around f7.1, f8, f9, where it looks the sharpest, you've got a good depth of field. So in landscape photography you might want to have a good depth of field all across your photo from the whole section. So that is probably around the best area, between about f7.1 to f9, f10. That's probably your best bet for shooting. Obviously it depends on if it's a cloudy day, if it's a sunny day, what you can get away with, because you don't want to make your picture blurry by having a high aperture when you can't use it. But on a clear blue day where it's really sunny, it is best to use it, in my opinion. So but when you go down to like f3.5 and around the lower values, you lose depth of field. Now depth of field is just how things stand out and how 3D they look. They almost start to lose their depth and how rigid they look in the photo. Whereas if you go above to like f15, f20, it almost starts to look a little blurry and it doesn't look 100% sharp. It looks like someone's maybe smoothed it over a bit. So it all depends. Sometimes in photography people want to use a low aperture. This is to make the subject, so say you're taking a picture of a child and you want that child to stand out from the background. their depth of field will be quite spot on, whereas the background may be quite blurred out, look quite shallow, and that makes the subject stand out. Whereas in a landscape photography, you want the whole area to stand out, so you'd have a more f8, f9, f7.1 aperture. Now, aperture and shutter speed is very much used together, so you might, to get a higher shutter speed, you might lower the aperture, but it's all about giving and taking. So say you had f400, 1/400 for the second shutter speed, but you wanted to have more depth of field, so you might have to lower that to 1/300 for the second to have that higher aperture and that better depth of field. It all depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting sport, you might have to lower the aperture so that you can have the shutter speed so your subject doesn't blur. This then comes on to ISO. Now, ISO is the lower the value, the less light again on the photo. So you have a really high ISO, the photo will be really quite highly exposed. Now, so on a sunny day, nice blue skies, you're taking a picture of a landscape, you may only need to have 100, 200, 400 or so ISO, because there is enough light coming from the sun and the environment to make that photo correctly exposed. Now, this is often best to shoot the lower the better, I think, with ISO, because the higher the ISO, you get more grain. So you're shooting on 10,000 ISO, your picture will be quite grainy, and it will look almost quite blurred. It becomes a little bit blurred and also really grainy, and it doesn't look very sharp. So basically, shoot with the lowest ISO that you can get away with. However, you may want to have a higher ISO so that you can get, again, a higher shutter speed or more depth of field. It's all about giving and taking with all three different settings for this. But so on a cloudy day, you may need to have a higher ISO, maybe of 2,000, 3,000 or so, and levels like this can be edited out in post-editing on Lightroom and other equal editors and stuff. They can be edited out, and this may be able to get you your higher shutter speed or your more depth of field. It all depends on what you're shooting. So if you're shooting sport, landscape, things like that, things that are moving fast, things that are stationary, it all depends on what you want to shoot. So it's all about using all three of them in partnership to get the best result, and just having a play around to see which presets work best. And over time you will know that maybe if I use f8, 1/200 per second and 400 ISO, that this light and this subject works well in that, and you will get the hang of it.